my belief is um, financial growth for us is not just about financial literacy. It's about understanding where we are coming from and why do we do the things that we do, the financial behavior, right? And that's what I want to explore with your novel as well, because you have taken it to the other step. Like you went back to understand, but then you use your imagination to write a different story. So let's just start with why now? Like why now in 2024, 2025, going back to understand where you're like that background and how that has shaped you to be public because you are in, every day in the TV.
It's a great question. I think it was I wouldn't call it a perfect storm. I would call it a perfect opportunity of a few things happening at once. I would say I've always been fascinated with my family's history, but I was especially curious in this moment because our country is changing a lot, right? I mean, and we're seeing this new renaissance of questions about who is American and who is not, who belongs and who doesn't, what languages are acceptable, what languages are not. And when I think about how my family came to this country and the how of it, right, I'm almost brought to tears and humility, like to my knees, tears in humility every time, because I think about always my great grandmother, who I think for me is in my mind the sort of origin story of my family. And I think of that because here was a woman who is a Black Caribbean woman. And in the early had the courage to say, where can I go to become whole? Where can my family go to become whole? Where can I be considered more than 3/5 of a human? And to have the courage in the 1900s, una negra, to come from Jamaica and go to Cuba and then end her life in the United States. Y tenía una familia en cada país. She had a family in each country. Wow. She left a child behind in Jamaica, which is its own wild story that frankly, I thought about writing too. And I'm very close with that family. Very close with that family. But even that we're closer in adulthood, right? As we like reconnected and found each other. But then my great grandmother went to Cuba where she met my great grandfather. Y tenía mi familia. That's where she started having, our family that is from my side. Estados Unidos, they came to the United States. And this is ultimately where, she died. And I just think about that courage. And in this moment, when we're asking those questions, I want to make sure I never silence the question that bore me, which is where can I go and where can my family go to be whole? And, my dad, he always says, your story is an American story. Only in this country can you go from being the granddaughter of a garbage truck driver to going to Harvard. Like that he's like, that only happens here, right? Like in his mind and what America was for him and represents for him and the promise for him, right? And so, but I think it's so important to interrogate those questions about how we got where we are. So that was always kind of in my mind. But then on the sort of practical novelist romantic side, I had an experience in 2023, shortly after I got married, where a guy from my past who I'd had this very sort of amorous relationship with in college, Indian guy from Britain, sort of resurfaced after 12 years and asked a lot of questions, right, about what happened then and where we were now. And, of course, I like told my husband I didn't even think about it when I saw him again, 12 years later. But then he kind of asked these really interesting questions that at this point I had just gotten married. And it was an interesting way to think about the lives we live, the multiple lives within us as women. And, how even now we have to hold space for all the lives we once had as we think about where we are and where we want to go. And those lives don't die, right? They coexist. And that's beautiful. And I think that's a way to explore and think about, how, again, to your question in your podcast, like how we got where we are. I think the why is always so interesting. And even as a journalist, the why has always interested me more than the what. Right? I'm much more interested in how we got here than what the outcome is.
I totally agree. And I want to dive deeper in something that you said, because the courage for a Black woman to leave, that is something that is so tied to the way that we understand being safe with money, even until today, right? For women in general, money means having options to leave. But back then, leaving was the way to creating the option for you to leave, right? It's like to live a life, you had to get out. There was no other way. How finding more of your grandma's story has today shaped the way that you envision to raise your daughter?
Ay, tú sabes, I feel like me está palpitando el corazón. I feel like I almost want to cry just thinking about the question, because it's something I think about a lot and do not completely have the answer to yet. And I say this because I look at my father, right, who's the product of this immigrant story. And for my dad, finances were security. That was his goal. It was making sure, especially coming from immigrant roots, that he had, and security was freedom. He wanted to make sure he had security
Right.
for his family, which meant he had freedom for his family. And I think about me and my brothers and like my generation. And for me, it's a little bit more than that. It's about the freedom to have passion. But I
Mm,
think as a woman, and I'm now a mother, I think about how the need for that security is also very trapping, because I think as a lot of women, we get trapped and seduced by the idea of comfort. Trust me, I want to be comfortable for my family. I want to make sure my child never wants for anything. I want to make sure she has educational options. When she says her prayers at night, she said literally anoche, gracias por las oportunidades escolares. Thank you for my educational
oh,
opportunities.
wow.
And I'm like, whoa, she must really hear me
Yeah.
talking like that, at
Yeah.
home. And so I want her to have that. But at the same time, I want her to have true freedom, where she doesn't have to be seduced by comfort, where she never has to be, you know, taking a job or periods in her life where she has to endure just to be comfortable, just to be safe. I pray that she doesn't have to go through periods of endurance and financial endurance, so that she can really have a life that is completely focused on passion and service and true freedom without sort of those constrictions. So that would be my dream for her. How I get there, I don't
Okay.
fully know, but I do know that this book was part of the answer. I do know, as someone who had historically only had one career and
Mhm.
one goal that was only about journalism and news, this unlocked a whole new portion of my life, of my heart, of my creative life. And that happened also after I had her. I mean, after
Right.
I had my daughter, my dreams came in Technicolor. I am such a bigger dreamer. I am far more productive. And my dreams are just, they're so much bigger. I have so much more capacity on the other side of her. And part of this book was creating an avenue for me to express that, use my talent, and be financially honored for what I was able to create and be valued based on my talent.
I hold that thought because I want to dive in that part. But I just wanted to say that I completely agree with you on that. People don't understand the levels of creativity that mm, motherhood gives you. Like my whole business, and I'm remembering this. Today is November 26th. Last year, December 19, it was the first Christmas for my daughter. It was going to be her first Christmas. And I received a letter of cease and desist from somebody that trademark under my name after they saw me going to Oprah with a big boom because Oprah covered me. That I know it was after that because the trademark came one day after that piece was live. And of course, I didn't do it. You guys know in the podcast that I share my mistake. I was all hands out. That girl did it very good because she knew she had to go through the trademark, and I did it. But December 19th, that happened. And it was my daughter' first Christmas. And I look at her. I look at her and I cried and I said, I don't care. Like, I'm gonna rebuild this thing,
Mm.
but you're gonna have the best Christmas. And we are gonna absorb everything that we need to absorb. And from that moment, it was just creative avenues. Like, you have seen me, you that are listening, you have seen me going on tech talks, you have seen me going into all of these interviews. Like, we have up level in such a way, but it was because I was determined to look at her eyes every single night and say, this is what we're gonna create. I don't know where that creation is coming from. I'm not a creative person. I promise you, I'm not. I'm a finance person. I'm an Excel shit. I'm not
But you
this
discover you are
level
a
of
creative person.
right. I discover I was, but it's this level of kind of like tuning into I want to do it for you, but for myself as well. It's like I want to model the world for you, and the only way to do it is to do it myself. And it's a level that I don't think that I would have experienced
And I
otherwise
also
if I
don't think
didn't
you would have
become mother.
experienced it, pero también I don't think you would have experienced it if you hadn't had that moment of pain, if you hadn't been under
Yes.
duress. That also happened to me.
I know you are enjoying this interview, and I am interrupting for one thing only. As I told you, I'm writing a book, and now I am in the phase of beta testing, and I need four, only four of you who want to get your hands on the roughest rough draft of this book right now and help me to transform this rough draft into a great piece. If that is you, and you want to be part of the very tight community that is going to get the hands on, please, please, please email me to hello@brownwhite2money.com and say you want to be part of that group so that I can send you the next steps.
That also happened to me. That part I will say for another moment and another well, we can have another podcast. But I also had a very painful experience
Yeah.
at the beginning of writing this book. And it was a painful experience. I had a painful experience professionally, and it really had me reframe a lot of things. And in that way, I think, look, in every way, motherhood is the single most healing thing I have ever done. It's not just about
Yeah.
giving the life and building the world that you want your daughter to inhabit. It's building a world for you too. Like you existir, because I'm a mom doesn't mean like I stop existing and that
Exactly.
I stop having. No, 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 no. Every ambition that I have now, mi hija, like every single ambition doesn't have to do with her. I
No.
still live and
Yeah.
breathe in my own dreams and ambition, and I'm building a platform so that she can live and build and dream in hers. Pero a la vez, at the same time, being able to create that world simultaneously and protect her and launch her and right the world and right some of the wrongs, like what happened to you, there's a really powerful lesson in, Alejandra, there's a powerful lesson in building the world that you want, not just having a dream, right? You're
Yeah.
building a dream, not having a dream. It's not a passive process. It's I have everything inside of me and I am completely capable of engineering the life and the lifestyle that I want. And that's the lesson that I'm actively learning now and that the book has helped me unlock.
So that's my next question on that train of thought. How this book, the writing process of this novel, has defined what freedom and financial freedom means to you now.
The book for me is freedom because I think the process of writing shows me that everything's going to be okay. It was a place for me to dump and process some of my thoughts and feelings and experiences. And it is so cathartic and therapeutic that when you're able to put a shape around your life and experiences, and that's what fiction can help you do because you're not recording what happened, you're putting shape around what happened and explicitly defining the
Right.
meaning of what happened and knowing that I always have that place to retreat to, that no matter what happens to me I have a place to process and shape it, is cathartic and freeing to me. And also financially, the fact that I was able to be valued, seen, paid, compensated fairly and appropriately for my skill and my talent was completely revolutionary. To have that as an additional stream of income and know that you don't have to be reduced to one thing. You know, the world may know me as a journalist, and I worked really hard to be one. And I am one of those people who will always be one because this is what I love. I mean, this is it's so much of who I am and my purpose, telling stories and listening. And also, I get to create stories and listen and build from the stories that I hear in the world. And that is financially freeing to be able to have another career, you know, another passion, another hobby that you get to build a financial life from.
Morgan, you just said something. You said to be seen, to be heard, right? That just, when you think about be seen and people listening to this podcast and reading the Forbes article, when you think about seen, I think about you. Like you are literally being seen, but you were in the other side of it. How was the definition of being seen that you were not getting that this book gave you?
Yo, es que tengo lágrimas en los ojos because what a no, seriously. I mean, I'm very like touched by that. Like I'm very touched by that because I mean, I honestly never have thought about it that way. You're right. I mean, I feel like I feel like a silly girl because I just never I mean, I never really thought you're right. I am definitionally seen literally on a television every single day. And
Yeah.
yet, I have spent so much of my life as a border builder, a boundary crosser, you know, existing in multiple spaces that I've spent most of my life creating spaces for myself that didn't exist before. And so in many ways fighting to be seen. And I am, you know, I feel very seen by the people who know and who love me intimately. But I wouldn't say this world is necessarily I would not say that this world is necessarily always built to see people who are different. I don't think that
Uh-huh.
this world and our society currently necessarily meets difference with curiosity and compassion. And that is the
Yeah.
world that this book allowed me to create, a world where I could express the instances that created feelings of being unseen and also build a world where we can be curious about our neighbor and compassionate towards our neighbor, even if we're not the same as our neighbor. And that's the world that I want my daughter to inhabit. That's the world that I would like to inhabit. And that's the world that I have been, you know, with my close friends and family, able to create people who love and serve thy neighbor. But I think we have a lot of ways to go. I don't think we're existing right now in a moment where we are seeing compassion, like, in corporate spaces, in our political language. We're not seeing compassion and grace normalized en masse.
Right. Right. If you were to give a person that is vivid to read your book, if you were going to give one like little chapter or little part of the book that they cannot skip, what that little part will be.
The very, very end. When the book is finished, I wrote a letter to my daughter, and for a savvy reader.
Like I knew she was going to say that, but yeah, because I feel like it all comes to the climax, right? It's like the end. I already want to have this book. I know it's not available until 2026, but I'm like, I want to see it now. But go ahead, please continue.
No, you're very bueno. Tú sabes, after I turned in my manuscrito, after I turned in my manuscript, I called my editor. Well, no, I sent her an email and I said, I want to add something in the end. I know this is a little unconventional and most people just do acknowledgments, but I really want to write like a proper letter to my daughter. And I just thought about it like when I'm dead and gone, you know, I hope my words and my book and my thoughts outlast me. And if this book is sitting in the Library of Congress, the one thing I want to outlast me is this letter. And for an eagle-eyed reader, the letter answers a lot of the unanswered questions in the book. You can draw the connection between what happened in my real life and why the protagonist made some of the ultimate choices that she made. But it is the letter to the end is why I wanted to put this book in the world, and the message I wanted my daughter to have in the world that I hope to leave her. And so that is the thing. I think if there were one thing that someone had to pick up at the book, I would honestly say if you wanted to leave with the lesson, if you wanted to leave feeling seen, if you wanted to leave with the message of hope and know that it's all going to be okay, and if you wanted to know me, I think that would be, the most efficient and satisfying answer to those questions.
Okay, did you hear something that you liked in today's episode? If so, don't keep it to yourself. Go ahead right now. Yes, right now, before this episode ends, and send this episode to those 3 friends, 3 girlfriends that you know you can go to talk about finance, independence, money, business growth, entrepreneur life, and all of these juicy topics. Share this episode with them, because that is the only way we can grow together. I'm Alejandra Rojas, your host, and I will see you next week.